Hi there, good afternoon, good morning, and good day. Welcome here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show that is dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, we're going to start a mini series today. We were going to start this last Saturday, a couple days ago, but I had a couple things going on, and I thought, you know what, it should probably be better if I started on Monday. So I'm starting it today, Monday, and we'll run it through to Friday. Be 5 episodes in total. So this series will feature these two bands, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and we'll be talking about them each and every day for the length of the entire 5 episode series. So hopefully this will be of interest to some people. It's of interest to me. Started this idea back in September of 2023 and decided once I started doing the monthly series to put all my mini series on hold for then, except for the ones that Ben was giving me. So other than that, I've done, I think, maybe one other or a couple other mini series throughout the last year and a half. Haven't done many, so I want to kind of do some of these now, and this was one of them. So I have done a Genesis Yes one, and I think I may have done a Floyd Jethro Tull one. I'd have to go and look. I'm not 100% sure, but I wanted to do this one because these two bands are somewhat synonymous with each other. Both starting roughly the same period with their albums, at least. Judas Priest much older as far as origins go. I think if I'm wrong, I think Iron Maiden's origins started in 77, 78, and then culminated in the release of this album in 1980. Where this album, for Judas Priest, they started their band in 1969 and culminated in the release of this album in 1976. The band members for both bands changed drastically during that period of time, too. So with the series, I've got 5 topics that I'm going to do. Today's topic will be their debut album and talk a little bit about some of the aspects of the albums that people need to know, I think. So we'll go with Iron Maiden first. So Iron Maiden, their membership, of course, at this time, Steve Harris on bass, Dave Murray on guitar, Dennis Stratton also on guitar, Paul Di'Anno on vocals, and Cliff Burr on the drums. This was the original lineup for this album to start. This is their debut album from 1980. I think we'll just do kind of talk about a little bit more about Iron Maiden. So, upon the release of this album back in 1980, and just if I have to refer to my notes, I won't be able to see them without these. I think this album had a somewhat of an impact. Initially, they had a following. It was kind of the beginning of that new wave of British heavy metal, and they were kind of the face of that. So at this point in time, album's very different sounding than what would become what we would think of as the sound of Iron Maiden, which was be going forward. But this album was a little bit different. Got a bit of a hard rock feel to it. At times, almost just a rock and roll feel to it. Very kind of got some punk influence on it. Yeah, a completely different sounding group at this point in time. More so than what you would get moving forward. This does have Phantom of the Opera on it. And there's Charlotte the Harlot, the original Charlotte the Harlot, on here as well. Not to be confused with the Acacia 22 Acacia Street, which came out later. So this is a good debut album. I wouldn't say it's a great debut album. I personally never really warmed up to it 100%. I do like the album cover. I like their art. I think the band is pretty tight at this point, but still not really sounding too much like the Iron Maiden that I came to like. Also with this particular album, wanted to talk a little bit about. So you've got a couple of guys on here, actually 3 guys on here, who well, at least two of them, Paul Di'Anno and Dennis Stratton, really didn't experience the success that the other members experienced later on. And Clyde Burr, of course, only with them for the first three albums and then didn't experience anything after that as well. But so you ended up with just Steve Harris and Dave Murray kind of being the guys on this album that went on to the major success with Iron Maiden. Now with Judas Priest, this album's a bit earlier, 76. Now sometimes I hear people refer to Judas Priest as also a member of the new wave of British heavy metal. I don't really think of them that way. I know I can see why people might think, because they didn't kind of come to success until the late 70s, early 80s. So kind of jumping them in with the other members of the band. But these were a little bit earlier. In fact, I consider them one of the first kind of pure metal sounding bands. Did they have that new wave of British heavy metal sound? Yeah, at times I think they do. I also think they have a lot of that old style, like the Black Sabbath kind of feel to their music as well. So on this album you have Rob Halford vocals, Glenn Tipton guitars and guitar synthesizers, and he also does second vocals on this as well. KK Downing on guitars, Ian Hill bass guitar, and John Hench on drums. So you've already got that kind of nucleus of the band going forward here, strong nucleus of the band. Now ironically, the original members of the band, none made it to the album. Atkins, all of those guys were gone by the time Judas Priest signed their record deal and made their first appearance on a album. And by that time, they'd been around for 5, 6, 7 years. So I've been around. So to me, they're a late 60s, early 70s band that changed, dramatically changed to evolve to this, which is, in my opinion, different than what you would get with Judas Priest going forward. So like Iron Maiden, bit of a different sound here. This is a rock and roll sound. Actually, quite a bit more progressive sound on this album than any of the stuff going forward. At that time, I think they're probably basically feeling themselves out to see how they want to go and how they want to pursue. Even so, you got Rob Halford here with long hair. Not something you see very much with him. Sorry, just trying to run away here. And so this is a strong first album, but not my typically go-to type Judas Priest album. Different sounding, of course. Like I said, released in 76. Not a bad debut album, but not anything really notable that, people got up off their chair and said, hey, Judas Priest got an album. That's not something that happened. Yeah, so a very different sound going forward for them. But again, it's a debut album, and everybody often experiments on their first album to see how they like it. Now actually I'm going to get into this a little bit more. So I'm going to give you my favorite track and tell you why it's my favorite track from each album. Obviously, my favorite track on this is Phantom of the Opera. This was the kind of one I knew right away, and I never really got into the rest of the album much. I kind of like the Prowler a bit, but I never really got into this album much. But that would be my choice if I had to make a choice for a favorite song on the album. It'd be Phantom of the Opera. It's a little bit longer, a little bit more heavy, and a little bit more Iron Maiden soundish. Same on this album. I don't really particularly have a clean-cut favorite, but if I had to, it would probably be One for the Road, the debut, or Rock-a-Rolla. One of those two. I kind of like both of them. They are different than what you normally would get from Judas Priest, but I still like them quite a bit. And a Run of the Mill is another good one. A bit longer of a track, too. So those would be kind of my favorites for this album. Interesting title and interesting album cover, too. Not a bad one. Very different from what would come forward, though. So for me, that's kind of my take on their debut albums. So that's going to be the opening episode for this mini series. We will be doing 4 more. Tomorrow's episode will feature what I consider to be their biggest album. Kind of going by sales, as I guess the way we're going to go by this. There's a couple of albums by both bands that had pretty big sales, but I think most people would agree that they had also only a couple that kind of fit that genre, like that fit that kind of, this is the album that made the group type of thing. Their magnus opus, if you prefer. So we're gonna talk about those albums or album for that series tomorrow. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this opening episode of Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, the mini series that we're going to be running for the next 5 days. So please hit the like and subscribe. If you want to make any comments about either of the 2 albums I brought up today or anything about these 2 bands going forward, you're welcome to do so in the comment section below. And we will see you tomorrow on the mini series Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. Take care, have yourself a good evening, and goodbye.